The wild, glitter-covered energy of the 1970s was slowly fading, but the beat was still alive. In the nightclubs on Rush Street, disco music still ruled. The Bee Gees were playing, Chic was on the dance floor, and people were still trying to forget their worries under spinning lights. In movie theaters, Christopher Reeve had just made the world believe that a man could fly in Superman. Chicago itself was in transition. The city's legendary mayor, Richard J. Daley, a man who had ruled like a king for decades, had died just 2 years earlier. Sitting in his chair now was Michael Bilandic, a calm, polished politician who promised that the powerful Chicago machine would keep running smoothly. Chicago had a reputation to protect. This was the city that works, a city of steel mills on the south side, towering skyscrapers downtown, and people who prided themselves on toughness. New York might shut down for snow. Boston might complain. But Chicago? Chicago ate winter for breakfast. You didn't fear the weather. You respected it. You wore extra layers, cleared your car, and went to work. Buses ran. Trains ran. Streets were plowed. It was as reliable as the sunrise over Lake Michigan. Until it wasn't. By the second week of January 1979, that certainty was about to disappear. Snow from earlier storms already covered the city. It wasn't clean white anymore. It was gray, dirty, and packed hard with soot and ice. The temperatures were brutal. The ground was frozen solid, like iron. Meteorologists saw another storm coming. They predicted maybe 4 to 8 inches of snow. Annoying, sure, but nothing Chicago couldn't handle. The city had plows, salt, and confidence. What it didn't have was control over nature. On Saturday, January 13th, the sky turned a dull, empty gray. The wind, what Chicagoans call the hawk, started blowing hard off Lake Michigan, cutting through coats and scarves like knives. Snowflakes began falling around dinner time. Most people didn't even look outside. It was Saturday night. They were watching TV, checking sports scores, doing what they always did. They trusted the system. They had no idea that by Monday morning, that system would collapse. Overnight, everything changed. The storm stalled over the city. It pulled warm moisture from the Gulf and smashed it into bitter cold air. Snow started falling heavier and wetter. By Sunday morning, January 14th, people woke up to a shock. This wasn't 4 inches. In some places, it was already a foot deep, and still falling. The wind screamed through downtown streets, blowing snow sideways at nearly 40 miles per hour. Drifts piled up against buildings. Alleys disappeared. Snow climbed over fences and pressed against back doors. A woman named Patricia, who lived in a small house on the northwest side, looked out her kitchen window and froze. She normally saw her garage in the alley. Instead, she saw a solid white wall of snow. The drift had swallowed her trash cans and blocked her door. She tried to open it. It wouldn't move. She was trapped inside her own house. That's when people realized something was wrong. In Chicago, alleys are everything. That's where cars go. That's where garbage goes. When alleys vanish, the neighborhood stops working. Patricia turned on the radio. News stations were broadcasting non-stop. The tone had changed. Then came the announcement that stunned everyone. O'Hare Airport was closed. Completely. Nothing in, nothing out. That never happened. Monday, January 15th, was Martin Luther King Jr. Day. In 1979, it wasn't a full holiday yet. Many businesses still expected workers to come in. And Chicagoans, stubborn as ever, tried. That's when the disaster moved from weather to chaos. The Chicago Transit Authority, the CTA, was the city's lifeline. The elevated L trains moved hundreds of thousands of people every day. But the L had a weakness. It ran on electricity from a third rail. Wind-driven snow packed into switches and motors, then froze solid. Trains stalled between stations. Platforms filled with people shivering in brutal cold. A man named Jim, who worked downtown, remembered standing at the Belmont station. He said it felt like a refugee camp. People huddled together for warmth. The tracks disappeared under white nothingness. The usual roar of the city was gone. Just silence. When a train finally came, it was so full the doors couldn't open. Jim gave up. He walked 3 miles home through knee-deep snow in dress shoes. Along the way, he passed abandoned buses stuck at strange angles, left behind like frozen whales. On the streets, things were even worse. Mayor Bilandic went on television and told people not to panic. He said plows were running and streets were being cleared. But people looked outside and saw the truth. Plows couldn't keep up. Salt didn't work in extreme cold. Worse, many plow drivers couldn't even reach their trucks because their own cars were buried. Main roads became narrow ruts. Side streets vanished completely. And that's when a uniquely Chicago tradition became law. Dibs. Here's how it worked. You spent hours digging your car out of a mountain of frozen snow. Your back hurt. Your hands burned. But you finally freed your car. When you left, someone else might steal that hard-earned spot. So Chicagoans marked their territory, not with cones, with whatever they had. Dining chairs, lamps, ironing boards, old furniture, even mannequins. The message was clear. I earned this spot. Touch it, and we will have a problem. Police ignored it. Everyone understood. Dibs was survival. While neighborhoods fought over parking, City Hall fought for its life. Snow kept coming in waves. Nearly 47 inches piled up by the end of the month. Garbage trucks stopped moving. Trash piled high. Rats came out. Then came the breaking point. To keep trains running, the CTA skipped stops. But many of the skipped stations were in Black and Latino neighborhoods. Trains sped past frozen platforms while people watched in anger. It looked like the city cared more about suburban commuters than its own residents. The anger exploded. Jane Byrne, a small, sharp-tongued politician running against Bilandic, saw her chance. While others stayed warm, she stood in the snow at unplowed corners. She looked into cameras and said what everyone felt. This city has failed you. People listened. When the snow finally stopped, the damage was clear. Streets were destroyed. Potholes later swallowed tires whole. But the biggest impact came at the ballot box. On February 27, 1979, voters marched through dirty snow to vote. Michael Bilandic lost. Jane Byrne won. She became Chicago's first female mayor. The blizzard of '79 had toppled a political machine. The lesson was simple and brutal. You can survive scandals, but you can't survive unplowed streets. The snow eventually melted. Chairs returned to basements. But Chicago was never the same. The city rebuilt its snow system stronger than ever. But for those who lived through it, the memory remains. The silence, the cold, the chair guarding a parking spot, and the knowledge that when everything fails, all you have is a shovel and your neighbor.